Welcome everybody, my name is Mike Cirillo. We are back for Turn Zero Episode 2, and tonight we are going to look at some Clone Wars lists. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Happy to be here.
Yeah, good.
Pretty good.
Oh, you guys sound thrilled. I guess I'm going to have to bring the enthusiasm tonight.
We need to stop recording at the end of the day.
That's very true. I don't have the kids to worry about. So if you guys joined us last time, what we basically do here on the show is we take two lists, we give a scenario, a map, and we flip over some battle cards, and we go around in an around the horn style and give our opinions on what we think the blue player and red player should do to properly prepare for the game. So tonight we are going to start with our hot takes like we did last time. And we thought we'd spice it up a little bit. We had a nice RRG mini drop last time. We don't have it here. So with Luke Eddy confirming on the Gen Con cast that we have a points change coming later this season, we're going to give each of us, like one or two things that we hope we see for the points changes, specifically focused on more of the Galactic Civil War factions, because obviously the arcs and clones have been beat to death at this point, and no one needs to discuss that. So, Keegan, if you were to have like one or two things you would like to change with the points changes, what would you like to see?
Well, I'm expanding beyond just the points changes, kind of the errata concept. I think we saw some great changes last year with the new keywords, such on the airspeeder, like immune to range 1 and the addition of range 5. I'm really torn because I'd love to see some cool changes to the vets, pathfinders, and the airspeeder, but I think I'm going to settle on talking about the vets tonight. I would love to see the Mark II get out to range 4. This thing is one of my favorite pieces of equipment on the table, but it dies really, really fast. And I think getting that little extra boost, making it that threat of fire support at range 4, would really bring its value up to where I'd like it to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A range 4 Mark IV sounds pretty terrifying, frankly. You can get some pretty nasty Leia bombard fire supports off of that.
I might have to
Nick,
start playing Leia again.
Yeah, I don't know. She's still decent.
She is.
Nick, you like to play a lot of Rebels. What do you think?
Sure. Man, I'd love to see my boy Han Solo on tables in a competitive setting. Like, that'd be great. There are so many cool keywords that, like, going back to what Keegan said about the erratas, like, adding like tactical to Han would be amazing. Long shot is another one that I'd love to see on him, or even just a points decrease. Like, I mean, man, like my boy needs help. Like, we need to see more Han Solo on the table. Like, there's no doubt about that. So I'm going with Han. Like, I would love to see Han drop 20, 30 points, and then I could try bringing him out. But right now, you can't take him over Cassian or Luke. So that's my take.
You're saying he's not 30 points better than Rex?
Triggered.
No clones.
Yeah, all positive.
Oh,
thoughts.
yeah, I broke my own rule. That's why I'm in charge, right? Josh, what would you like to see?
So for those of you that do know, I am a traitor to the Empire, but I think one thing that would bring me back in is if we could see some changes to Darth Vader. I don't think I want to see a points change with him because he's not a spammable unit. That's not who Darth Vader is. He needs to be expensive, but he needs to be a lot stronger. I would love to see them change him by putting armor 1 on him at least, not make him too overly defensive. I would also be interested in seeing some changes in keywords or addition of new keywords. Much like Palpatine has pulled the strings, I would love to see new ways to motivate them integrated onto his card where it's passive, where any unit within range 1 to 2 of them takes a damage and they can perform an extra action. I think it would be pretty interesting. It seems the way Vader would do it, but again, I don't think he needs a points change because he should be expensive.
Yeah, it'd be cool to maybe give Saber Throw Blast for him, something that, to give him an actual ranged attack. I don't know, it's only 3 dice. But and then I would like to actually see Death Troopers get Impervious. They're like 125 points if you kit them out properly, which is the cost of some of our new special forces. And all of the Mandos, even Pathfinders, blanking on the others, BX and ARC Troopers all have Impervious or some way of adding extra defense dice when they get shot. I'd like to see Death Troopers get that for their cost. They're pretty fragile, and I think you would see a pretty large resurgence of them on the table with something like Impervious. So let's get into the meat of our show tonight. We are going to a pretty busy map tonight. We're actually going to visit the Bespin City Gardens. And instead of myself monopolizing the entire introduction, we are going to have Josh introduce the list that we have tonight.
So
let's start with our blue player.
Our first list was submitted by Matt Grace. His name is Unjointed on the Discord, and I wanted to go ahead, or he wanted me to plug a channel on YouTube for him by Zorpa Zorp. What they bring is Legion narrative, where I think it's more cinematic rather than bat reps, but pretty entertaining to watch. So this is from Matt Grace. He is playing a CIS list. He is droids. His commander is Count Dooku, kitted out, and you'll like this, Nick, with Force Choke, Force Reflexes, and Force Push, and finally aggressive tactics in his command slot. No saber throw there. I know you're a fan of that. We have 3 naked B1 battle droids, 1 B1 battle droid with comm relay, and then another B1 battle droid with HQ uplink. We have 2 BX droid commandos. Both have tenacity and both have vibro swords. And the final activation on his list is an AAT battle tank, kitted out with Lockdird, armor-piercing shells, high-energy shells, and link targeting array, coming in with 9 activations at 793 points. Our red player was submitted by Codec from the Legion University. You can usually find Legion University casting on Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. He has some pretty good games going on. It's usually built around untraditional rules. It's pretty fun to sit in and watch, sometimes even more fun to sit in and play. Codec is bringing in the Republic today, starting off with Obi-Wan as his commander. Obi-Wan is kitted with Force Push, Jedi Mind Trick, aggressive tactics, and tenacity. R2-D2 as his operative with comms relay. Codec fills out his core with a phase trooper, or a phase 2 clone trooper with 5s and Overwatch, a phase 2 clone trooper with Echo and Overwatch, and another phase 2 clone trooper with Z6 and an Overwatch. He also has 2 naked phase 1 clone troopers. To round out his list at 10 activations, we have 3 ARC Trooper strike teams, all with a DC 15. And this is at 799 points.
So I think these lists are actually pretty interesting because they're kind of built around 2 separate things. The CIS list likes to get up and in your face. You know, the battle droids can kind of overwhelm you with the bodies. We all know what Count Dooku can do when he gets within range 2. And then 2 full BX commandos. I mean, they do throw 8 white that surge at distance, but they also have those vibro swords that have a higher expected hits than Dooku when they get into melee. So if he's able to get them in there, that's a pretty devastating front line. And when you throw something like an AAT to bomb away at sniper teams all game, you can pretty quickly eliminate some activations. Therefore, Codec also has some range with 3 kind of 4 snipers with Echo and the 3 DCs, and then Obi-Wan for anyone that gets close. It's a pretty unique matchup here that I'm excited to see. So we have chosen the Bespin City Gardens tonight. This was used for the quarterfinals in the Invader League Season 5. It was also one of our round-robin maps in the Gen Con tournament as well. It is made by Ellis out of, he's got a podcast now. It's like his 7th, I think, Falcon Crew, something like that. But no, it's actually Falcon Crew podcast. It's his 3rd. It's a pretty great show if you want to check that out. It's based with a lot of the different European players, and it's well worth your listen. But Keegan, I believe you're going to take us through this map tonight, right?
Sure, and I think both Nick and I played this in Gen Con, so Nick, if you want to chime in on anything,
I have not played it in
Gen
Con.
You haven't?
Oh, it's definitely, okay. I definitely have some opinions on it.
For anyone who's been around for the length of Legion, this is an evolution of the original Bespin City Gardens that was popular in, I think, early Invader Leagues and then made into a real table for the first LVO. It brings some of the symmetry of the original, but also I think increases the line of sight blocking, and I think that might be some of the opinions that Nick you've got around that.
Yeah.
It features All the green areas you're seeing on here don't have any sort of movement restrictions for trooper units, small base trooper units. They can move in and out. There's no climbing into the parks like you might have seen in the past. But all the walls are actually just tall enough for an AAT to get over, which is relevant for our conversation tonight. Nick, what else did you have to think about on this one?
I mean, hey, ATs are cool, but not on this map. This map looks really cool. It's beautiful. It's a nice layout. It's very symmetrical, so that's not something I love to see on maps that like I make or I want to play personally. But you know, there's a lot of line of sight blocking. So if you're a trooper heavy list, you love this kind of thing. There's not a lot of lanes for vehicles. If you brought something like an FD cannon, you'd be in a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. Or setting up your Mark II fire supports, stuff like that. There's a lot of heavy cover, and it would be hard to not have some form of cover at any point on this map. But it's beautiful. It is beautiful.
Making the cover a little more complex. The buildings, the ovular shaped buildings, have open windows and doors in them too. So there are angles to get line of sight things through there. And hypothetically speaking, an operative Vader might be able to do some effective scattering and force choking with there. I might not have experienced that in my round 2 embarrassing defeat of Gen Con. So.
Yeah.
One thing, if I can add on this, both of the statues in the center, they are actually impassable. I believe they are height 5. Mm-hmm. And those walls that we see that are just shy of the AAT height, you actually can't end your turn on top of them. So scale here is useless.
It's a very difficult map. I actually just played on this one specifically about a week ago, and I had triple BXs, and getting them around there is not as easy as you might think it would be. It's a very trooper-friendly map because there's a lot of line-of-sight blockers that you can kind of hide your guys around, especially when it comes to something like standby sharing and dodge sharing. You can really hide a single clone leader and really make a major impact on the game. But the Bestman map is pretty cool. It did make an appearance at LVO 2020 as well. I got to play on it twice, so I was glad to travel 3,000 miles to play TTS table. Twice, no less. So our blue player tonight is actually going to be the Count Dooku droid list. And if we're going to pick a battle edge, it's kind of symmetrical, but, starting with Nick, which side do you think the droids probably want to begin on?
What about, I'm probably taking the top, just because on the top left there are these 2 walls. One is almost in the corner, and then one is about 12 inches out from the other one. That'd be a really good lane for a clone ball to move around. I don't know that I want them to have that. I'd probably want that to be on my side. But this is not a map that I don't have strong opinions on which side, I guess I should say. Sorry.
Equally bad for you?
Yeah.
Josh, you always have strong opinions.
So I believe with having, like when I was at Gen Con with this, having 2 tanks, it is a mistake taking the top side of the map, mostly because those 2 walls really box you in. However, only having 1 tank here makes it a little bit easier to deploy. You don't want to give the clones a lot of line of sight blocking coverage, especially when you have the tank that is hopefully going to be raining a lot of fire upon them. The bottom deployment zone does have some open areas, especially if we see long march or rollout. So I think I'm going to go with the top and hope that I see long march or rollout out there.
Keegan, do you concur?
I actually do. I think it's a nice clean sweep for us tonight. I like the top a lot for this as the blue player. As a veteran and exclusive Rebel player, my expertise in droid tanks says go with the top. The other pieces, knowing this blue battle deck, most of the deployments are lengthwise. We've got rollout, we've got long march. The only exception is hemmed in, which could do something, but even hemmed in looks pretty good on this top side. The comments about what the clones can do with the lanes is another reason that I stay with the top. them in any sort of long range movement. And I haven't played the tank, obviously, but I'm imagining a scenario where you can park it right behind that wall, see over it, and get some shots downrange as well.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you guys tonight. Having just played on it, like I said, about a week ago, the top half does actually give a little bit of difficulties to Count Dooku getting into the middle because there's a lot of walls and difficult terrain he can't jump or otherwise traverse. However, that's not something you can actually give the clones. If you give them a nice foot-long wall to hide behind in a middle objective, you're going to lose every single time. So definitely takes the top side, and that's where we're going to start tonight. So as we flip over our battle cards tonight, we are going to flip over Sabotage, Payload, and Key Positions, Hemmed In, Long March, and Rollout, and then finally Clear Conditions, Rapid Reinforcements, and Fortified Positions. So a lot of the different things that we were talking about in that intro there, some of our lengthwise deployments have shown up, Hemmed In has shown up. We've got some pretty basic conditions tonight. There's not a whole lot of drastic effects. It's just a matter of, is the entire table heavy cover or is it not? And finally, we've got a few objectives that actually don't deal with the center too much. So my little fear there of the clones, dominating something like an intercept point really isn't going to come to fruition. Sabotage and Payload kind of let you shift the battlefield to other sectors. As our blue player tonight, the droids get the first opportunity to kill. And Keegan, what card do you think they want to cut, or do they even want to pass and let it ride?
Being outnumbered on activations, I'm hesitant to let it pass completely. I think I talked a little bit about the liking the lengthwise deployments for this map. So I think I'm probably going to just go ahead and get rid of Hemmed In. I'm comfortable with either Long March or Rollout, but I want to still be able to decide on eliminating something else with my second veto. So get rid of Hemmed In now, so I don't have to do it next time.
All right, and what do you think, Nick?
I agree. Hemmed In. For the same exact reasons he said, having a long deployment on this battlefield seems really good, and getting rid of Hemmed In, that's probably what I want to do.
Josh, take us home.
This is a tough one because I don't like to see this draw right here. Initially looking at Hemmed In, it seems like a problem. Most of the terrain is set up at about 45 degrees, which means with Scout on these arc strike teams, outranging outranging everyone that the droids are bringing. And especially with Hemmed In giving you 45-degree firing lanes, I don't think it's a good start for the droids, considering they're going to take a lot of shots early. However, I have to assume here that the red player is going to try and force Payload. I can't see them sitting on Sabotage moisture evaporators, mostly because clones don't move too well. So I am actually going to cut moisture evaporators and go towards Key Positions because the tank itself can be line of sight blocking and help to block off one of those lanes. So I'm cutting Sab.
That's actually a pretty interesting take. Both of these lists are decently good at Key Positions, but the droid's ability to actually block off the center one with the AAT is actually a little diminished here. If we're looking at this table, the center Key Position is that middle green park, and the AAT itself only covers about half of it. So the advantage that the droids get with the tank is kind of taken away. I think I'm going to go with Keegan and Nick in this case and cut Hemmed In. It's not great for the droids. They definitely don't want to be taking shots at their soft underbelly right away. Leaving something like Long March or Rollout does give Dooku an opportunity to get into position without getting shot. We talked about the 4 snipers that the Republic has. All 4 of them have high velocity and all 4 of them have immune deflect. So they're going to be getting those shots in there with critical. They're going to be getting those shots in there and not have to worry about getting any kind of damage taken back. And giving a little bit of distance for Dooku to get away from that and get hidden into position first, I think that's the right call. So I am going to flip over Hemmed In to begin with. So coming into round 2, we are currently playing Sabotage, Long March, and Clear Conditions. And we're going to get into the blue player's first choice here. And Keegan, what do you think? I'm sorry, the red player's first choice. And Josh, what do you think the red player is going to do here?
I don't think I want to be stuck on rollout, especially with their tank being able to deploy so far forward. So I'm not going to cut Long March. I don't really like rapid reinforcements here. And I don't want to give them sabs, so I'm not going to try and go towards fortified positions. So actually what I think I'm going to do in this case is go ahead and cut sabotage moisture evaporators on this one.
And so just a question for you then. With rollout, if the tank can deploy that far forward, are you that scared of it if you have 4 snipers with critical and Pierce and Obi-Wan? Like, is that a concern? Is that potentially just offering
the
up
only
tank
reason
for you to
it's a
kill?
concern is because there's only one tank, and he has 3 units that if they get into melee, and there is a lot of cover here, that it's going to be more worrisome. So if I'm spending a lot of my firepower to try and stop the tank, then that's not a lot of firepower that's going to be going into those BX droids or Dooku. And Dooku really matches up pretty well against Kenobi. So I don't think I want to give the tank that liberty to start taking so many shots up close.
All right, I can respect that. Keegan, what do you think?
I think killing Sab is... sorry, making sure my kids weren't sneaking in. I think killing Sabotage is the right move here. All of those conditions are equally fine, and so I don't think I have any particular care, but I agree that the clones don't want to be messing around with Sab. And similarly, I want the flexibility to go to key positions if I need it, or not.
Nick? You're pretty good at VAPs, right?
I don't want to play VAPs. I probably want to play key positions, but I guess looking at like the conditions down the bottom, rapid reinforcements does nothing for me, and fortified positions just adds more heavy cover to a map that already has a lot and makes it harder to move. So I wouldn't want to be in a situation where I might have to play fortified positions or rapid reinforcements. So I guess I'm eliminating sabotage and moisture evaporators so that I'm in a spot to maybe play key positions at the end here.
Yeah, I think you guys have this pretty spot on here. Clones are actually pretty good at sabotage because they can push positions early when they have Rex. We don't have Rex tonight, so it's a little bit harder to push that BAP early on. And when you're looking at 3 of your activations only having 2 models and an AAT on the other side of the table, it's pretty easy to go down activations quickly and go down points. So I think cutting sabotage is definitely the right call here. I like the opinions that you guys gave. You all had a different reason for it, so I'm going to go with the majority here. So moving into the blue player's next cut, we are now playing Payload, Long March, and Clear Conditions. As I second-guess myself. So, Nick, what do you think the blue player wants to do with his final action? Does he want to pass, or does he want to push and force something else?
I think I want to push Long March and play rollout, and get my tank out in front early. There's no reason not to. It kind of gives you more flexibility with the tank, in my opinion. If you're probably playing key positions anyway, just based on like that clone list probably wants it. So I'm gonna eliminate Long March for rollout.
All right, and Josh, what do you think?
I think the same thing, especially if we get stuck on payload. That means eventually, if we're on rollout, that there's a good chance that these payloads come pretty close to each other. So that does give you an opportunity for those BX droids or Dooku to get in. Plus, it's forcing clones to do what they don't always want to do, which is move. And they're going to be relying a lot on standbys here, and there's only 3 Overwatch units. So I think I feel more comfortable with rollout here to give that tank some open shots. And I think I'm okay with both of the objectives here.
Keegan.
I'm going to agree with these guys, although I have an extra amount of reluctance to giving up the possibility of getting stuck with payload. My first instinct is to kill payload whenever I can, but that's I think that's a personal problem, as they say. It's the point the points about clones not having as much mobility really giving up a lot of the value of the standby if they are going to have to move on payload neutralizes my concerns about activation count and just not liking that objective. So I agree. Getting the extra distance early on with rollout, starting to rain down that tank fire early at range is probably the advantage here. So cancel Long March.
All right, well, you guys are really boring tonight because everyone keeps agreeing. So this is not as fun. So we are going to kill Long March for rollout. I have a couple thoughts on that as well. The tank going forward also presents an opportunity to provide some mobile cover for your BX commandos. We didn't really touch on that, but it gives you a better opportunity to really get them in, especially if we're going to play something with rollout where everything is going to congest. We talked about getting Dooku and multiple units in. If you've got a mobile heavy cover tank to get them there, that's pretty good. I also kind of disagree a little bit with clones don't like to move and shoot. With all the token sharing that they have, you've got 3 units with tactical. You also have 2 naked phase 1s for batteries. They do have that option where they can really move and shoot and still have their aims available. Rollout, I also think, is a little bit harder for R2 to score than Long March because that range 5 that R2 needs to cover is only to that little square versus the entire side. So secret mission in a low scoring objective like payload or key positions becomes less of a factor that you need to worry about. So let's go ahead and cut Long March for rollout. I think you guys have it right again. So we are going into our final cut for the red player. We're currently playing payload, rollout, and clear conditions. And for the final choice for red, Keegan, what do you want to do?
Well, now I'm torn because you made really good points about clone mobility here. And the mobility would be my biggest concern with payload. I feel my decision at this point would come down to what I know about the player across the table. If I think that they are someone who's going to get mired down and not and be too conservative and miss the opportunity to move their payload forward, I think I'd go ahead and pass and take it. But if I don't know much about and I want the safer play, I think I push all the way to key positions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Knowing your opponent is a pretty crucial aspect, and this is a unique situation where I personally don't know what Matt I personally don't know what Matt likes to do. I don't like what Rich likes to do, but that's a good insight. Nick, what do you think?
I'm gonna be boring, and I'm gonna say cut payload, play key positions because it's just a lot simpler. I'm sorry. The clone army, my experience is like they generally don't want to have to move if they don't have to. And I agree that they can be mobile, especially this list with the naked phase 1s that can, grab tokens for the phase 2s and everything can still walk around. But I think still they still want to turtle up as much as possible. And I think key positions, with all this heavy cover, it'll be relatively easy for things to get there. The BXs with the Vibro Swords will be a problem, but I think that it's something the clones will, have to try and handle. So I'm cutting payload for key positions.
And Josh.
Wow. So I guess I have to provide the hot take, which there's not. I mean, I'm going to cut payload for key positions. The main reason is there's a lot of cover here, especially if we're going rollout. And I think it's going to be very difficult for my clones to knock out a B1 squad. So what I think I'm actually doing here, despite what I said earlier, is actually trying to knock out the tank and then push R2 down to the bottom of the map and into scoring position. I actually think I disagree on this particular map. I think rollout might be better for R2 scoring on this map than Long March, only because there's having that extra deployment zone be pushed out towards the bottom is going to give R2 a lot of cover. So I think I cut payload here and go key positions.
Yeah, that's a fair point with R2. That does actually give him a pretty good lane. It's still a long lane that he has to traverse and get through the BXs, but it is possible.
I've got one hot take for you, Mike.
Go for it.
Go if we're being real crazy and go bold, go with payload, cut clear conditions, get rapid reinforcements, and force them to think about holding back the first round to defend that insertion ability in the back. Maybe.
Yeah, that's true, because the BXs are actually really good at rapid here, but you're also going to isolate them from the army, which against clones is probably not the best idea with melee units.
Well, this is the clone player on the last veto. So
That's true. That's true. Oh, well, yeah, actually, that's kind of what I'm getting at. They actually force him to consider to drop that. I think I'm going to go with what you guys said again and cut payload for key positions. You guys made good points tonight. So I know I brought up the fact that this clone list is actually pretty okay with moving and shooting. Unfortunately, they do have an AAT on the other side. And the AAT is really, really good at moving forward and slowing down the opponent's payload because it's fast, its base is large, and it actually counts for an objective. Fancy that, right? So we're going to cut to key positions. It also makes it a little bit easier because a lot of the clones' bodies are contained in those two phase 2 squads with the named guys, Echo and Fives. Yeah, that's what they are. So if one of those falls early, that's actually going to be a huge problem with payload, and you're going to lose a lot of your firepower. So if you can be a little more conservative, keep them back with key positions, you're really going to play to your advantage with a triple Overwatch. So let's cut payload for key positions. So at the end of the day, we're going to play some key positions, we're going to play rollout, and we're going to play clear conditions. Let's talk about the first couple of rounds, who we think has actually come out on top here. Josh, who has the advantage?
I think going into this, because of the range of the firepower, because of what critical and lethal can do, I do think that and because there's a lot of cover for troopers here, I do think that the clones will come out on top. I think they will deploy fairly conservatively and just take pot shots on the tank with their arcs throughout the game and with Echo throughout the game. And eventually we see that AAT disappear, and then we're looking at a lot of naked B1s, a very long march for the BX to travel, even with Scout 3, and then an even longer march for Dooku to travel. And I see Kenobi pulling off a lot of fire from those tanks as well. So I think the clones take this, but who knows what the dice are going to do.
And Keegan.
I think you know what, I'm gonna give a strong advantage to the droids on this. I think there's some good places to put key position. For instance, the forward wall that we were talking about on the blue side is going to be outside. That's a great one. You can just make that the key position. Forward to deploy the tank with rollout, just park it in base-to-base contact with that, looking over top. It's got coverage of the center position and coverage over most of the probable key positions that the clone player is going to have. With that, use the cover and line of sight blocking to serpentine those BXs all the way in and crash them in when he's not expecting them.
All right, Nick, you have to kind of break a tie here.
Keegan made some really good points there. But I probably have to say that the clone player has the advantage here. For a lot of the same reasons Josh said, the tank, there's a possible scenario that this tank is dead after 2 or 3 rounds from all the critical and all the lethal. But I'm not sure that if the tank falls, I don't think that the droids have the firepower to keep up with the clones, especially with Echo out there and Fives out there on all the Overwatch.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you guys. I'm going to bitch out a little bit here and ride the fence. If the tank falls within the first 2 turns, I think the clones win this pretty easily. 4 instances of critical and lethal on the table, 2 phase 1s to feed aims to those guys in addition to their tactical. I think there's a pretty good chance it falls. It doesn't have any kind of immunity to pierce, and unfortunately the clones have a lot of sources of it. It's also a little bit vulnerable to Kenobi hitting it turn 2, turn 3, because he's going to have impact 2, critical 2, and some pierce, and get some wounds through. So I'm going to assume that the dice fall as they should, and I do think the clones probably walk away with this. It's really hard to assault a key position when you've got 3 sources of Overwatch and Kenobi keeping guard on them. They're also up on activations from the start and have R2, so if that tank falls, round 2, you're now up 2 activations, you're in a really strong position to put a chokehold on it. So I do think the clone player has the advantage here. So, obviously, these cards are going to be posted on the Discord as of the airing of this episode. So, everyone, please join in. Let us know what you think of that. I know personally, I'll actually be at work this week, so I'll be able to, waste some company time and engage in some conversation. But more importantly, we have a new feature this week to use for our second episode. We obviously used Matt's list for here. I'm just going to do a quick refresh on it as an overview. We've got a pretty loaded Dooku, 3 naked B1s, and then 2 other B1s that have the comms relay and HQ uplink, 2 full commando squads with tenacity and vibro swords, and then the full AAT with Locked. For our list critique section this week, I think it would be pretty fun to kind of go over this, see how it compares to some of the other droid lists we've been playing, and give a little bit of our feedback. What do we like? What do we think could probably be streamlined? And so on and so on. Keegan, do you think this is a pretty strong list and a unique concept? What would you change about it?
Well, I of course can't really speak well or with any expertise to strong list, but you know what? I love this list because it has the uniqueness. I haven't seen the BXs, the full BXs with the vibro swords, out and about too much. I love seeing a player really take a concept that they want to figure out and drive it through. And I think that if that full squad gets in, what is that? 4 red, 4 white. If you lose one model on the way in, it's still 4 red, 3 white with the tenacity.
It's pretty nasty.
With charge, I think that there's some really cool things that can happen in there. I'll leave the critique of the AAT to all you Locked fans here, but I like it. I'm glad to see it. Stripped down B1s is interesting. I know he had to do it to make this work. I wouldn't want to do this with 8 activations. 9 is the right way to go, I think. But all those B1s are just cannon fodder to be chewed through, I think, with this setup.
Yeah, I'm actually going to jump the order that we pre-talked about and go myself here. I actually really like the concept of this list. The B1, the BX droids, especially on like a real life table, where you've got a little bit more density and kind of less open areas to traverse because people like to throw up their giant Imperial terrain buildings and such. They're actually like super effective. And Nick and I ran a game on Saturday where he was able to, pretty significantly use the BXs to get around a lot of the buildings, scale on top of them, get down and get into melee and really mess with the clones. ARC Troopers are really good in melee, but BXs with their vibro swords are even better. And especially with the tenacity, if they lose a model, it almost doesn't matter because they're still adding another red that surges to hit. And it kind of functions as like a double AAT list here, but instead of the second AAT, you have the 2 droids. So the opponent still has to worry about that triple threat with Dooku, the BX commandos, and the AAT tank. So I actually really like it. It's actually something I'd like to try out myself. The comms relay on the B1s really is effective with getting the order onto whatever BX or the AAT tank that you want, especially with that LTA, getting that free aim and almost guaranteeing 6 to 7 hits with every shot is pretty well worth it. So I think the list is pretty good. I would look to add Saber Throw. 9 activations means Dooku is frequently going and being able to get into safety. He's not sitting at that 7 to 8 range where he's going to be hung out to dry. So getting that nuclear shot on his 1 pip with the 5 black and 3 reds of Pierce 3 is probably something to look at. I'm not a huge fan of reflexes myself there. But Josh, what do you think?
I really like the concept of this list as well, and I think one of the most interesting things that both you and Keegan talked about was the fact that he has tenacity here. And really, when you take a wound, it doesn't do that much to your at least melee dice pool. I think my biggest concern with the list is that it is limited in firepower, at least at range, and it's going to give a lot of work for the tank. Let's say, then it does happen from time to time in a real table that it is fairly open. I think the list is going to struggle there. However, if there is a lot of cover, if there's a lot of line of sight blocking terrain, I think it does really well. There are some changes that I would make. Again, as I may have mentioned earlier as well, I don't like the reflexes here. I do like Saber Throw. And also, I am not fully convinced that armor-piercing shells are the way to go here. I think you do have enough points to cut armor-piercing shells, to cut reflexes down to choke, and you should have, what is that, 15 with 7? You do have enough points to add at least another heavy weapon in there, maybe one of the droid snipers, to at least give some extra firepower to your army. So I want to see a heavy weapon in there, and just cut a few points to add that in.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Potentially cutting the armor-piercing shells and just adding a second HQ uplink to guarantee that both BXs can get an order.
That too, yeah.
So AI move dodge isn't terrible when you have charge, especially with the vibro sword. So it's not as much of a factor. But if you're really going to double down on that melee, getting both of them in order to activate them when you want, that's a good point. Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo a lot of what you guys already said, but this list looks like a lot of fun. Count Dooku's like my favorite unit in the game. The AAT is awesome. I just painted like 40 BX droids this week.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm excited to get them in the table in any form I can. So this is a list that like I might play this as soon as I can. But yeah, like Count Dooku's great. He's expensive, but he's worth it in my opinion. Cunning. His 1 pip, his 3 pip, his 2 pip, like great command cards. B1s are just like a lot of disposable bodies, and it's a lot for any list to chew through 30 of these guys, if you can keep them in heavy cover. BXs with tenacity and vibro swords, I've actually played them a few times on TTS months ago, and it's a lot of fun, as long as you don't leave them out in the open. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't really have a lot to say, but go Lock Derd.
Yeah, we follow the Book of Locke, so hopefully he helps us out with our saves. Last question that I have, and I think this is a pretty unique factor to droids at least. We didn't even really touch on aggressive tactics. Is it that staple to Dooku that just strict orders is irrelevant? I mean, is that just something that droids, for example, don't even need to worry about? We know they have that droid trooper, but is strict even a consideration here, or is AT just staple to Dooku?
Nick, I'll let you go.
I would rather have a Steam leader over strict orders in this list, honestly. Did I take yours?
Yep, that's fine.
I would rather with Dooku, solo Dooku. I think I'd rather, if I can't afford aggressive tactics, I'm taking a Steam leader because he's got 3 courage. If you can keep those B1s in range of him, like they're not gonna panic. Ideally, and. I would say in the order of importance, it would be aggressive tactics, a Steam leader, and then strict orders.
It's kind of like a throwback to the original when Leia came out, right? The Steam leaders actually potentially see him play.
Yeah.
What do you think, Josh?
I do think I like aggressive tactics here more because your units that are really going to make a punch here are going to be your BX and your tank. And protecting them at all costs, I think, is important. That is kind of one of the reasons I do want to shave down points to either get an uplink or a heavy weapon in there. So you can either spread out your firepower or you can make sure that those BX are getting that surge. That being said, I do think a Steam leader here can be really good. These B1s are basically cannon fodder for protecting Dooku. However, there is a lot of critical out there right now. And so I think that's why I would choose aggressive tactics over esteemed. It's just the mass amount of critical out there.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm going to end us with not a hot take, but a little complaint. If you cut both tenacities, the comms relay, and the armor-piercing shells, you could fit shields on both droids. But they already have vibro swords, and you can't take both, and that's bullshit. Because this list with swords and shields would be absolutely devastating.
Oh yeah,
shields are good.
But unfortunately, we can't run that.
It's almost as if they saw the impact of having swords and shields on the same unit.
Hey, they balance droids, but they can't clone. So yeah.
You almost made it.
Yeah,
we almost
were
I made it
the
to the
beacon
outro.
of light in the Legion community.
Sorry, everybody. But this has been TurnZero episode 2 tonight. If you'd like to reach out to us with any kind of feedback, if you have a list you'd like to see on the show in 2 weeks, or a critique, we have lives. Please send it in to LegionTurnZero@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to any of us on Discord. You'll see us in the main chat. You've probably seen us around. I go by Ghost Walking. We have NSB, we have Matrokin, and Josh, go ahead and say your tag before I butcher.
Peregrine. Peregrine.
Yeah, apparently I did that last week wrong, so we'll make sure that works tonight. But please feel free to send in any kind of feedback, any kind of lists you would like to see. We're going to try to make some changes to make the maps a little bit easier to see when we're talking about it today. We'll blow it up a little bit more for you. And otherwise, in a couple of weeks with episode 3, I hope you guys have a wonderful time and stay healthy.